As you settle into the depths of sleep, allow your mind to drift into the realm of forbidden philosophy. Those thoughts and ideas that have been whispered in shadows throughout human history. Concepts that challenge the very foundations of what we believe to be true and acceptable. Tonight, as your conscious mind releases its grip on the day, your subconscious opens like a vast library, ready to absorb the philosophical truths that daylight minds often reject or fear to explore. The first forbidden truth that seeps into your sleeping consciousness is that reality itself may be nothing more than an elaborate construction, a collective dream that we have all agreed to participate in, without ever consciously choosing to do so. As you drift deeper into sleep, consider that what you call waking life might be the true dream, and what you experience in sleep might be glimpses of actual reality. The philosophers who dared to suggest this were often labeled as heretics, their ideas too dangerous for societies built upon the assumption of solid, unchanging truth. Yet here, in the safety of sleep, your mind can explore the possibility that everything you have been taught about the nature of existence is fundamentally backwards. Moving deeper into the forbidden realms of thought, your subconscious encounters the radical notion that human consciousness is not produced by the brain, but rather that the brain is a receiving device, a biological antenna that tunes into consciousness the way a radio receives signals from distant stations. This idea threatens the materialist worldview that dominates modern thinking, suggesting instead that consciousness is the fundamental fabric of reality, and matter is merely its shadow. As you sleep, this concept dissolves into your deeper awareness, planting seeds of understanding that will grow in ways your waking mind cannot predict or control. The forbidden philosophy of eternal recurrence whispers to your sleeping mind the notion that this very moment, this very life, has been lived infinite times before and will be lived infinite times again, exactly as it is now. This idea, championed by philosophers who were dismissed as madmen, suggests that every decision you make, every thought you think, every breath you take, has already occurred in precisely the same way countless times throughout eternity. Your subconscious absorbs this concept not as a burden, but as a liberation from the anxiety of choice, understanding that if everything recurs eternally, then every moment becomes infinitely precious and meaningful. As sleep deepens, your mind encounters the dangerous idea that free will is an illusion, that every choice you believe you make is actually the inevitable result of prior causes, stretching back to the beginning of time. This forbidden knowledge suggests that blame and praise, guilt and pride, are all based on a fundamental misunderstanding of human nature. Your sleeping consciousness embraces this idea, not with despair, but with profound compassion, understanding that if no one is truly responsible for their actions, then forgiveness becomes not just possible but inevitable. The forbidden philosophy of nihilism seeps into your subconscious, not as a doctrine of despair, but as a liberation from the crushing weight of imposed meaning. Your sleeping mind discovers that when all external sources of meaning are recognized as arbitrary constructions, you become free to create meaning from within, to author your own purpose, without seeking validation from authorities, traditions, or social expectations. This dangerous freedom terrifies those who profit from your dependence on their definitions of value and worth, but your subconscious embraces it as the ultimate expression of human autonomy. Moving through the forbidden territories of thought, your mind encounters the radical proposition that death is not the opposite of life, but rather its most intimate partner, the force that gives life its urgency and meaning. Those who speak openly of death as a friend rather than an enemy are often silenced or marginalized, their wisdom deemed too disturbing for public consumption. Yet your sleeping consciousness welcomes this understanding, recognizing that acceptance of mortality is the key to authentic living, that only by fully embracing the temporary nature of existence can one experience its full intensity and beauty. The forbidden philosophy of radical skepticism infiltrates your subconscious. The idea that nothing can be known with absolute certainty, that even the most basic assumptions about reality might be completely wrong. This concept threatens the authority of every institution that claims to possess absolute truth, from religions to scientific establishments to political systems. As you sleep, your mind explores the possibility that uncertainty is not a weakness, to be overcome, but rather the natural state of consciousness. And that humility in the face of mystery is the beginning of true wisdom. Your sleeping mind encounters the dangerous notion that human beings are not the pinnacle of creation, but rather temporary arrangements of matter and energy, no more significant in the cosmic scheme than bacteria or rocks. This forbidden perspective dissolves the human ego's desperate need for specialness, revealing instead a profound interconnectedness with all existence. Your subconscious absorbs this understanding not as a reduction of human dignity, but as an expansion of it, recognizing that being part of the cosmic dance is far more magnificent than standing apart from it. The forbidden philosophy of amor fati, the love of fate, seeps into your deeper awareness, the radical acceptance of everything that has happened, is happening, and will happen in your life. This dangerous idea suggests that even suffering, loss, and apparent failure are not obstacles to be overcome, but rather essential elements of a perfect cosmic design. Your sleeping consciousness embraces this concept, understanding that resistance to what is creates the very suffering that acceptance dissolves. As you drift deeper into philosophical sleep, your mind encounters the forbidden truth that time is not a river flowing from past to future, but rather an ocean in which all moments exist simultaneously. This concept threatens the linear thinking that underlies most human planning and ambition, suggesting instead that the past can be changed, the future already exists, and the present moment contains all of eternity. Your subconscious welcomes this understanding, recognizing that in the realm beyond time, all problems are already solved, all questions already answered, all seeking already fulfilled. The dangerous philosophy of radical solipsism whispers to your sleeping mind the possibility that you are the only conscious being in existence, that all other people, all external reality, exists only in your perception, rather than being a source of loneliness. Your subconscious recognizes this as the ultimate responsibility and the ultimate freedom, understanding that if you are the sole creator of your reality, then you have infinite power to transform it through the quality of your consciousness, moving through the forbidden territories of thought. Your mind encounters the radical idea that pain and pleasure are not opposites, but rather different faces of the same fundamental energy. This concept challenges the hedonistic assumption that pleasure should be sought and pain avoided, suggesting instead that both are equally valuable teachers, equally sacred expressions of the life force. Your sleeping consciousness absorbs this understanding, recognizing that resistance to pain intensifies suffering, while acceptance transforms it into wisdom. The forbidden philosophy of metaphysical anarchism seeps into your subconscious, the idea that no external authority has legitimate power over your consciousness, that every rule, law, and commandment is ultimately a suggestion that you are free to accept or reject. This dangerous notion threatens every power structure that depends on unquestioned obedience, revealing that true authority comes not from external sources, but from the alignment of your actions with your deepest understanding of truth and compassion. Your sleeping mind encounters the radical proposition that language does not describe reality, but rather creates it, that the words we use to think and communicate actually shape the world we experience. This forbidden knowledge suggests that by changing the way we speak and think, we can literally transform reality itself. Your subconscious embraces this understanding, recognizing that consciousness is not a passive observer of the world, but an active participant in its creation. The dangerous philosophy of existential absurdism infiltrates your deeper awareness. The idea that the search for meaning is itself meaningless, that the universe is fundamentally absurd and indifferent to human concerns, rather than being a source of despair. Your sleeping consciousness recognizes this as a liberation from the desperate need to justify existence, understanding that in a meaningless universe, every moment of joy, love, and beauty becomes a miraculous rebellion against the void. As you sleep, your mind encounters the forbidden truth that the self is not a solid, unchanging entity, but rather a flowing process, a river of consciousness that appears to be the same from moment to moment, but is actually in constant flux. This concept threatens the ego's need for permanent identity, revealing instead that what we call the self is merely a convenient fiction, a story we tell ourselves to create the illusion of continuity in the face of constant change. the forbidden philosophy of cosmic insignificance seeps into your subconscious. The recognition that in the vastness of space and time, human life is less than a fleeting spark, briefer than a single breath in the cosmic day. Your sleeping mind embraces this understanding not as a diminishment of human worth, but as a liberation from the crushing burden of self-importance, recognizing that true freedom comes from accepting our place in the infinite tapestry of existence. Moving deeper into the forbidden realms of thought, your consciousness encounters the radical idea that suffering is not a problem to be solved, but rather a teacher to be embraced. That pain is not the opposite of enlightenment, but rather its most reliable pathway. This dangerous wisdom threatens the entire industry of happiness and self-improvement, suggesting instead that true peace comes not from the absence of suffering, but from the complete acceptance of its presence. The forbidden philosophy of radical non-duality whispers to your sleeping mind the understanding that the distinction between self and other, between subject and object, between consciousness and its contents, is a fundamental illusion created by the limitations of human perception. Your subconscious absorbs this understanding, recognizing that in the deepest reality, there's no separation, no isolation, no otherness, only the infinite play of consciousness knowing itself through countless apparent forms. As you drift deeper into philosophical sleep, your mind encounters the dangerous notion that morality is not discovered, but invented, that ethical systems are human constructions rather than universal truths. This forbidden knowledge suggests that right and wrong are not absolute categories, but rather contextual judgments based on cultural conditioning and personal preference. Your sleeping consciousness embraces this understanding not as a license for harmful behavior, but as a recognition that true ethical action comes from compassion and wisdom, rather than from adherence to external rules. The forbidden philosophy of existential nausea seeps into your subconscious. The visceral recognition of the arbitrary nature of existence, the understanding that there is no inherent reason why anything exists rather than nothing at all. Your sleeping mind welcomes this understanding, recognizing that this apparent groundlessness is actually the source of infinite creative potential, that in a universe without predetermined purpose, every conscious being becomes a co-creator of meaning and value. Moving through the forbidden territories of thought, your consciousness encounters the radical idea that consciousness itself is the only true reality, that matter, energy, space, and time are all modifications of pure awareness. This concept threatens the materialist worldview that informs modern civilization, suggesting instead that physical reality is a dream within consciousness, rather than consciousness being a product of physical processes. The dangerous philosophy of radical acceptance infiltrates your deeper awareness. The understanding that everything that exists is perfect exactly as it is, that even suffering, injustice, and apparent evil are expressions of a cosmic intelligence beyond human comprehension. Your subconscious absorbs this understanding not as a justification for passivity, but as a foundation for action that comes from love rather than resistance, from understanding rather than judgment. As you sleep, your mind encounters the forbidden truth that the search for truth is itself the obstacle to finding it, that the very act of seeking creates the sense of separation from what is sought. This paradoxical wisdom suggests that enlightenment is not an achievement, but a recognition, not a destination, but the very ground of being from which the journey begins. Your sleeping consciousness embraces this understanding, recognizing that what you seek is what you already are. The forbidden philosophy of cosmic humor seeps into your subconscious, the recognition that existence itself is a divine comedy, a cosmic joke whose punchline is the very seriousness with which we take ourselves and our problems. Your sleeping mind welcomes this understanding, recognizing that laughter is not a distraction from spiritual truth, but rather its most direct expression, that the ability to find humor in existence is a sign of the deepest wisdom. As the night deepens and your consciousness drifts into the most profound levels of sleep, these forbidden philosophies integrate into your subconscious understanding, not as intellectual concepts to be analyzed and debated, but as living truths to be embodied and expressed. Your sleeping mind recognizes that these ideas are forbidden not because they are false, but because they are so true that they threaten the very foundations of the world as we know it. In the depths of sleep, your consciousness becomes a library of forbidden wisdom, a repository of dangerous truths that will influence your waking life in ways both subtle and profound. As you rest, these philosophical seeds take root in the fertile soil of your subconscious, growing into new ways of seeing, being, and understanding that will emerge in your waking consciousness when the time is right. The forbidden philosophy that infiltrates your deepest sleep is the understanding that you are not a separate being, having a spiritual experience, but rather the universe itself, temporarily organized into a form that can experience its own infinite nature. This most dangerous truth of all dissolves the final barrier between seeker and sought, between the question and the answer, between the dreamer and the dream. As you surrender to the deepest levels of sleep, allow these forbidden philosophies to become part of your very being, knowing that true wisdom is not something you acquire, but something you remember, not something you learn, but something you are. In the realm of sleep, all barriers dissolve, all categories collapse, and all forbidden truths become simply truth itself, expressing itself through the infinite creativity of consciousness, dreaming itself into existence, moment by moment, breath by breath, thought by thought. Moving deeper into the forbidden territories of your sleeping consciousness, you encounter the radical philosophy that every emotion you experience is a choice, that suffering is not imposed upon you by external circumstances, but is rather a decision made by consciousness itself. This dangerous understanding threatens the victim mentality that keeps humanity trapped in cycles of blame and resentment, revealing instead that even in the face of genuine tragedy and loss, the quality of your inner experience remains under your ultimate authority. Your subconscious absorbs this forbidden truth, recognizing that emotional sovereignty is perhaps the most radical freedom of all, the power to remain internally undisturbed, regardless of external chaos. The forbidden philosophy of quantum consciousness seeps into your deeper awareness, the understanding that consciousness itself follows the same principles as quantum mechanics, that reality exists in superposition until observed, that the very act of conscious attention collapses infinite possibilities into singular experiences. This concept suggests that you are not merely observing reality, but actively creating it through the focus of your awareness, that every moment of conscious attention is literally bringing worlds into existence while simultaneously destroying infinite alternatives. Your sleeping mind embraces this understanding, recognizing that consciousness is not a passive recipient of experience, but the active architect of reality itself. As you drift deeper into philosophical sleep, your consciousness encounters the dangerous notion that every person you meet is actually a reflection of some aspect of yourself, that the external world is nothing more than a mirror showing you the contents of your own psyche. This forbidden wisdom suggests that when you judge others, you are actually judging hidden aspects of yourself, that when you love others, you are actually loving qualities that already exist within your own being. Your subconscious welcomes this understanding, recognizing that in a universe where separation is an illusion, every encounter becomes an opportunity for self-discovery and self-integration. The forbidden philosophy of temporal rebellion infiltrates your sleeping awareness, the radical idea that you can choose to live outside of chronological time, that past and future are mental constructs that have no real power over the eternal present moment. This dangerous concept threatens the entire structure of human civilization, which depends on linear thinking, planning, and the assumption that past actions determine future consequences. Your deeper consciousness absorbs this understanding, recognizing that in the eternal now, you are always free to choose who you are and how you respond, regardless of what has happened before or what might happen later. Moving through the deepest levels of sleep, your mind encounters the forbidden truth that perfection is not a goal to be achieved, but the fundamental nature of reality itself, that everything is already perfect exactly as it is, including your apparent imperfections and struggles. This concept challenges the entire self-improvement industry and the religious notion of needing to become better or different than you are. Your sleeping consciousness embraces this radical acceptance, understanding that the search for perfection is actually the only thing preventing you from recognizing the perfection that already exists. The dangerous philosophy of existential courage seeps into your subconscious, the understanding that true bravery is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act authentically despite fear, to speak truth despite consequences, to love despite the certainty of loss. This forbidden wisdom reveals that courage is not about overcoming limitations, but about acting fully within them. Not about becoming fearless, but about functioning beautifully in the presence of fear. Your deeper awareness welcomes this understanding, recognizing that authentic living requires the constant choice to be genuine rather than safe. As your consciousness drifts into the most profound levels of sleep, you encounter the radical notion that consciousness is not confined to individual brains, but is rather a shared field in which all beings participate. That thoughts and emotions can be transmitted directly from one consciousness to another without any physical medium. This forbidden knowledge suggests that telepathy, empathy, and intuition are not mysterious phenomena, but natural expressions of our interconnected consciousness. Your sleeping mind absorbs this understanding, recognizing that in the deepest reality, there are no private thoughts, no isolated experiences, no truly individual consciousness. The forbidden philosophy of sacred rebellion infiltrates your deeper awareness, the understanding that sometimes the most spiritual act is to violate social norms, religious conventions, and cultural expectations in service of a higher truth. This dangerous wisdom suggests that conformity to external authority is often the enemy of authentic spiritual development, that true growth sometimes requires breaking rules, disappointing others, and standing alone in your convictions. Your subconscious embraces this understanding, recognizing that genuine spirituality is not about being good according to others' definitions, but about being true to your deepest understanding of what serves life and consciousness. Moving deeper into the forbidden realms of sleep philosophy, your consciousness encounters the radical idea that every limitation you experience is self-imposed, that the boundaries you perceive around your capabilities, your circumstances, and your potential are actually creative choices made by consciousness itself. This forbidden understanding suggests that you are not a victim of genetics, conditioning, or circumstances, but rather the active creator of your limitations, which means you also have the power to dissolve them. Your sleeping mind welcomes this dangerous freedom, understanding that with infinite creative power comes infinite responsibility. The forbidden philosophy of conscious suffering seeps into your subconscious, the understanding that pain is not something to be avoided, but rather a sacred teacher that can only fulfill its purpose when met with complete awareness and acceptance. This concept challenges the entire pharmaceutical and therapeutic industry's approach to discomfort, suggesting instead that suffering consciously experienced becomes a gateway to wisdom, compassion, and transcendence. Your deeper awareness absorbs this understanding, recognizing that the attempt to escape pain often creates more suffering than the pain itself. As you rest in the deepest levels of sleep, your consciousness encounters the dangerous notion that every belief you hold is a limitation on your experience of reality, that even positive beliefs constrain your perception of what is possible. This forbidden wisdom suggests that true liberation comes not from adopting better beliefs, but from recognizing the arbitrary nature of all belief systems. That freedom lies in the ability to hold beliefs lightly, using them as tools when useful, and discarding them when they no longer serve. Your sleeping mind embraces this understanding, recognizing that in a reality beyond belief, infinite possibilities remain eternally available. The forbidden philosophy of cosmic indifference infiltrates your sleeping awareness, the recognition that the universe is neither for nor against you, that existence itself is completely neutral, providing exactly what is needed for growth and understanding without any personal favoritism or judgment. Your subconscious welcomes this understanding not as coldness, but as the ultimate freedom, recognizing that in a universe without predetermined agenda, every being becomes equally important and equally free to create meaning through their choices and actions. Moving through the forbidden territories of thought, your consciousness encounters the radical idea that enlightenment is not a special state, achieved by special people, but rather the natural condition of consciousness when it stops trying to be something other than what it is. This dangerous wisdom threatens the entire spiritual marketplace, suggesting that what you seek is not something to be attained through practices, teachers, or techniques, but rather something to be recognized in the simple fact of being aware right now. Your sleeping mind absorbs this understanding, recognizing that the search for enlightenment is often the only thing preventing its recognition. The forbidden philosophy of existential playfulness seeps into your deeper awareness. The understanding that existence itself is fundamentally playful, that what we take to be serious problems and profound challenges are actually games, being played by consciousness for the sheer joy of experience. This concept suggests that worry, anxiety, and struggle are optional additions to the basic joy of being alive, that even the most difficult circumstances can be approached with a spirit of curiosity and wonder. Your subconscious embraces this understanding, recognizing that playfulness is not irresponsibility, but rather the deepest wisdom about the nature of existence. As your consciousness drifts deeper into philosophical sleep, you encounter the dangerous notion that every relationship you have is actually a relationship with yourself, that other people exist primarily to show you aspects of your own consciousness that you cannot see directly. This forbidden understanding suggests that when relationships are difficult, it is because they are reflecting back parts of yourself that you have not yet integrated or accepted, that harmony with others comes naturally when you achieve harmony within yourself. Your sleeping mind welcomes this wisdom, understanding that in a non-dual reality, self-love and love of others are literally the same activity. The forbidden philosophy of conscious death infiltrates your sleeping awareness, the radical idea that physical death is not the end of consciousness, but rather its liberation from the constraints of individual identity, that what you call death is actually the return of temporary consciousness to its source in eternal awareness. This dangerous wisdom challenges every fear-based religion and materialist philosophy, suggesting instead that death is not something to be dreaded, but rather the final teacher, the ultimate opportunity for conscious surrender. Your deeper consciousness absorbs this understanding, recognizing that acceptance of death transforms every moment of life into a precious gift. Moving into the deepest levels of sleep philosophy, your mind encounters the forbidden truth that every moment of anger, hatred, or resentment you experience literally poisons your own consciousness while having no real effect on its apparent target. This understanding reveals that forgiveness is not a gift you give to others, but rather the liberation of your own awareness from the toxicity of sustained negative emotion. Your subconscious welcomes this wisdom, recognizing that in holding onto grievances, you become the jailer of your own peace. The dangerous philosophy of infinite responsibility seeps into your sleeping consciousness, the recognition that you are not just responsible for your own actions and their consequences, but for the quality of consciousness you bring to every moment, for the energy you contribute to the collective human experience. This forbidden understanding suggests that every thought, emotion, and intention ripples through the shared field of consciousness, affecting not just your own life but the lives of countless others, in ways you may never consciously recognize. Your deeper awareness embraces this ultimate accountability, understanding that true power comes with the recognition of infinite interconnectedness. As you rest in the most profound levels of sleep, your consciousness encounters the radical idea that love is not an emotion, but rather the fundamental force that holds existence together, that what you call physical laws, natural processes, and cosmic evolution are all expressions of love in action. This forbidden wisdom suggests that hatred, fear, and separation are not true forces, but rather temporary absences of love, like shadows that exist only in the absence of light. Your sleeping mind absorbs this understanding, recognizing that, in a universe made of love, every experience becomes an opportunity to remember your true nature. The forbidden philosophy of temporal mastery infiltrates your deeper awareness, the understanding that you exist simultaneously at all ages you have ever been and will ever be, that your childhood self, your current self, and your future self are all present in this eternal moment. This dangerous wisdom suggests that healing past trauma is possible, because the past is not actually past, that creating future possibilities is effective because the future is already present, that time is not a river but an ocean in which all experiences coexist. Your subconscious welcomes this understanding, recognizing that in the eternal now, all healing is possible, all growth is immediate, and all potential is already actualized. Moving through the forbidden territories of sleeping consciousness, you encounter the radical notion that every challenge you face is precisely designed to develop capacities that already exist within you, but have not yet been activated. This understanding reveals that difficulties are not obstacles to your growth, but rather the very mechanism through which growth occurs. That what appears to be opposition is actually life's way of calling forth your deepest strengths and wisest responses. Your sleeping mind embraces this wisdom, understanding that in a universe of perfect intelligence, every experience serves the evolution of consciousness. The forbidden philosophy of conscious creation seeps into your subconscious, the recognition that you are not just observing reality but actively creating it. Through the quality of your attention, the nature of your expectations, and the depth of your beliefs about what is possible, this dangerous understanding suggests that victim consciousness is not just unhelpful, but is actually a creative force that generates more experiences of victimization. While creator consciousness naturally attracts opportunities for growth, joy, and contribution, your deeper awareness absorbs this forbidden truth, recognizing that in taking full responsibility for your creative power, you claim your birthright as a conscious co-creator of reality. As you drift into the deepest levels of philosophical sleep, your consciousness encounters the ultimate forbidden truth, that there is no difference between the seeker and the sought, between the question and the answer, between the lover and the beloved. This most dangerous wisdom of all reveals that separation is not just an illusion, but the fundamental creative mechanism by which consciousness experiences itself. That the appearance of otherness is how the one knows itself as infinitely diverse expressions of the same essential being. Your sleeping mind welcomes this final understanding, recognizing that in awakening to your true nature, you do not become something new but rather remember what you have always been. And in this remembering, the entire universe awakens to itself through your recognition.